Hello and welcome back to Giant Talk. I'm Roger, the host of Giant Talk, and I'm really excited today to be joined by Sara Jacklin, who, full transparency, is actually one of our fantastic associates, but she brings with her quite an interesting set of skills and bundle of experience around something which I particularly want to learn more about, and I'm sure those of you who share an interest in OKRs might also find what we're looking at today also quite interesting, because I get a sense there's a bit of complementary value that might be possible between the two. So what we're talking about today is design sprints. So anyway, welcome, Sara.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. So would you like to just tell the listeners a bit about yourself and what you've done and so on?
Sure. So I'm Sara, and I am a facilitator, and I facilitate lots and lots of different workshops. But one of the things that I have a particular specialism in is design sprints. And design sprints is a fascinating process, and one that I learnt all about whilst working for a company called AJ & Smart, who are based in Berlin. And they really pioneered design sprints for use in corporate organizations. And I worked with them for a good few years, running design sprints for their clients and training people in how to do them themselves, and have just fallen in love with them, really, as a fantastic way to solve problems.
Oh, fantastic. I can sense the passion from here. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So, okay, let's dive in. Tell us a bit more about design sprints then.
Okay, so a design sprint is basically a way of answering business critical questions. And it's done by working collaboratively in groups through a series of workshops. And these workshops are highly structured and very tightly facilitated over a number of days, normally done within 4 days, which is intense.
Wow.
And it's fun. But it's absolutely fantastic way of coming up with solutions to very, very important problems. And the aim of it, the whole purpose for doing it, is to make sure that the work that you're doing is the right work to solve a customer or a user need, to solve their problem, and to build a solution that really fits the customer's need.
Okay, so it puts the customer or the user right at the centre of the process, right at the heart of the process. And it sounds like a very sophisticated problem-solving process.
It is. It's exactly what it is. And, you know, as soon as you start talking about solving user needs and using user needs as a central concept, really you're straight away jumping into the world of design thinking, aren't you? That's what the whole methodology is based on. And actually often there's quite a lot of confusion between design thinking and design sprints. You know, are they the same thing? What exactly is it? And I always talk about design sprints as being a solution to the aim of using design thinking. So think of it like this. So design thinking says that you should use or that you should solve problems by thinking about what your user needs. Okay. And it says that you go through 5 stages to do that. You observe, you define, you ideate, you prototype, and you test.
Right.
So that's great. But what it doesn't tell me is how the hell I should do that. You know, how do I do those 5 things? So what the design sprint does is it tells you exactly how to do it. So think of it like this. This is a lovely, lovely way of thinking about it. You might be a huge fan of French cooking.
Yeah.
Love French cuisine. Maybe.
I don't mind the old beef bourguignon.
Exactly. Okay. Well, what a design sprint does is gives you the perfect recipe for beef bourguignon, okay? Rather than just telling you that French cooking is wonderful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So It gives you the recipe.
It gives you the step-by-step instructions to follow to achieve design thinking within your organization.
So the team that's working through it can get busy on cooking up a great solution.
Exactly.
Right.
It's fantastic because what it does is give you those step-by-step instructions. And it's a process that was invented by a guy called Jake Knapp when he was working at Google Ventures. So they used it very much in the arena of startups.
Right.
So to test and to validate ideas, to see whether they were worth investing in, whether they were really meeting a user need. But what then happened was that corporates and organizations that already exist and have products and services that already exist wanted to harness that power that it was giving them of that way of validating ideas.
Yeah.
And so the design sprint is now not only used in the world of startups, but also used in established organizations and businesses that are wanting to introduce new products or services, or are wanting to make existing things better and do it very, very quickly.
Right. Okay. So it's interesting you say that it was used by Google Ventures to sort of assess an opportunity, and also potentially, to get it off the ground, because it does feel like something which is very sort of startup orientated, and it's all about the lean enterprise, isn't it, at that stage? And you've got to get up and running quickly. You haven't got much resource. You need to get to market as swiftly as possible, and you can't afford to have a miss. And I think it's really interesting that corporates are using this type of methodology now. Usually the preserve of bureaucracy and glacial speed of action. Yet this is something that really just sort of turns that on its head and really breaks through that.
Absolutely, and it's all part of this embracing of agile, small a, as a concept, being able to move quickly, turn that ship, pivot, flex, do what needs to be done in different market conditions to meet that very quick change of priority. Right. And that's what's really difficult within corporations. But that's where it gets really exciting when you start to see systems joining together and processes joining together. And that's where I've been so excited as I've started my journey learning about OKRs, because this is where I can start to see it's like the pieces of a jigsaw fitting together.
Yeah.
So when you start to take these different processes and put them together within corporations and organizations, you can see how powerful they are to bring that kind of structure that's needed to help them move in an agile way. Okay.
Now, if you're running a design sprint, I mean, you said it lasts for 4 days? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite a time commitment. Yeah. Who do you usually have in the room?
It's a massive time commitment, and that's always the biggest barrier is to get the time commitment. But one of the things that is really important to understand about design sprints is what they are best used for, and they're best used for business critical challenges, things that are absolutely imperative to the success of an organization, and normally something that's very high risk, So what I mean by that is you wouldn't use a design sprint on something that there's an obvious solution to, because you would just go and do that. You know, you wouldn't invest the time in it. So what we're looking at is business critical, high risk problems that need people to work together and that there's no obvious solution for. So to do that, what you need is the right people in the room. And those people are normally senior people within an organization. They're the people that have the authority to make decisions. Because what you don't want to do is leave the room from a design sprint, show you're working to somebody, and then say, no way, that we're not doing that. Because then you're back at square one. So the people that need to sign it off need to be in that room at that moment and part of the process. But most of the team would only be needed for the first 2 days of the process. And these would be people who, let's call them key stakeholders or experts. So you might have, for example, if you're working in a smaller organization, you might have your CEO, your chief information officer, your chief customer officer, these people in that room bringing different perspectives from across the organization. Because remember, that the whole point of the design sprint is that it's collaborative. It's everybody working together. So all those areas should be represented. Now, what you then have supporting them are a very experienced facilitator who can guide people through those exercises.
Somebody like your good self.
Somebody like my good self, yes. And you then have somebody who is going to take charge of the prototype, because the prototype is a really crucial part of this process. And that's where we're creating something that gives users a realistic idea of what a solution might look like, but it's not a final product. The prototype is only going to have 1 day to make this. So we're not really looking for things to be absolutely spot on in terms of the branding or button styles or all that kind of thing. We just want to make something that gives somebody an idea of how something might look or feel, and the kind of way it's solving a problem. So we have somebody in the room that owns that. And then we also have somebody that's going to own the user testing, because we're going to show this prototype to real users. So we have an expert in the room who can handle all of those user testing requirements.
Right.
So that's your sort of core facilitation team, is those 3 people. And then you would put between 4 and 6 experts into the room as well. And those are the people that represent the business and can come together to give that holistic view of the challenge that's facing the business, and can sign off for their business area in terms of the impact and the involvement, and make sure that their business area is represented.
So it's a real cross-functional team.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the product teams that we often see pulled together. In fact, I can see how a product team can form out of a design sprint. Is that something that you do see happen?
100%, yes. And the team that should be in the sprint are the team who are really going to be responsible for making the solution happen.
Yeah.
For bringing it to life within an organization. Right. And so that's really a great way of judging who earns their place in the room. Because that's another thing with design sprints, is that you absolutely do not want any passengers. Nobody should be in the room unless they're earning their place in the room. They have to have a critical input that they're bringing, because otherwise they just get in the way. They're just baggage, and you don't need that.
Ruthless, but I can see why. I can see why, with it being a lean process. Absolutely, we don't want any waste, and people who don't need to be there is a form of waste, isn't it?
It is a form of waste. Yes.
So, I want to go on in a second and ask about the relationship, as you might say, between OKRs and design sprints. But before I do, you mentioned that you need senior leaders, certainly decision makers in the room. Yes. And I'm curious because they spend such a long time thinking at really high level, way above the clouds, right into the blue sky. Doing this kind of process, I can imagine, pulls them right down to earth. Yeah. How do you usually see them react to that? What? I'm curious because I can imagine some of them probably feel like, oh, it's quite a nice change, but others might actually feel quite like a fish out of water.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are the two extreme responses that you get.
Right.
Some people in the design sprint process that. It's almost like a kid in a candy shop, they're so excited. They're just like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. I love this. And, they're spitting out all these crazy ideas all over the place. And then you have the other people who just don't really know where to start. That they feel so far out of their comfort zone that they just don't really know what to do. And that's why, the facilitation of it is so important, because one of the things you're doing is looking for those responses and looking for how people feel and how they're participating in the exercises.
Yeah.
And helping them, putting an arm around them and guiding them through it. And it doesn't matter how senior somebody is, you're not necessarily guaranteed to get the behavior or the output that you might want from them. So your job is to guide them through that and to maybe bring them down a little bit if they are a little bit too excited and too giddy, and to put an arm around them and help them if they're struggling. But yes, it's always very interesting to see senior people put into this kind of a process, because they often don't get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So go on then. Tell us about how you see OKRs and design sprints working together.
You threw that one at me, Roger. So go on then. Okay, so the way I see it and what I get so excited about is there's so much alignment at a conceptual level in terms of what's happening. So OKRs are all about bringing alignment across an entire business so that everybody's working to the same common goals to achieve the same high-level strategic objectives.
Yeah.
The problem is that requires collaboration. And more often than not, people don't know how to collaborate with the best will in the world. People come to work, they want to work together, they love their colleagues, or maybe they don't, but they know they've got a job to do, but they just don't know how to do it. And the workshops that we run at There Be Giants are fantastic, because they show people a framework for that collaboration and how to do that. And that's exactly what a design sprint's doing. It's the same execution of a process for collaboration. But what it's also doing is helping people, and I'm talking about design sprints here, is a design sprint then helps organizations to take some of those next steps. So if, for example, an OKR session has resulted in a objective or a goal to create a new product or a new service, or to grow exponentially, to make some really dramatic changes.
Yeah.
A design sprint can then be used to very, very quickly start that process so that that momentum is carried on and the teams are able to execute using another process that feels very familiar because it uses a lot of the same exercises as the OKR workshops.
Okay, that's interesting. So if we're talking, asking the chicken and the egg question here, it sounds like OKRs come first and then followed by design sprints.
100%.
Right, okay.
Yes. And I would actually then add a third layer, Roger, just to complicate things, or potentially not. But if we start with OKRs, that's the beginning of our journey.
Yeah.
Then we run a design sprint. Now, remember, design sprint isn't a silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything. It should only be used for the appropriate challenges. But we go OKR, then we go design sprint, and then we fall into agile delivery. And agile with a capital A this time, okay? So that's where we start running our sprints, our delivery sprints using agile methodology. And those three things together are so complementary and fit so nicely together that organizations can implement these very, very succinctly and with synergy across the organization. So it sounds overwhelming. Oh my God, we're going to do OKRs and we're going to do design sprints and we're going to do agile. It's a lot and it sounds scary. But actually, once you get your head around it, they're really complementary processes that work together.
Yeah, I can see for what's clicking for me in this is, I rabbit on about how important it is to define your key results as outcomes, okay, not as actions, and that's and this really sort of links into that even more, because if you define an action, then there's no room for a design sprint. Someone, usually at a leadership level, is telling others how to do it. That's simply what it is. But if you define your key result as an outcome, you're leaving it wide open for whatever solution people can come up with to achieve that particular result. And so that then leaves it wide open for the design sprint to come up and create whatever solution is going to be the best one for that particular outcome.
Absolutely. And that's where it's such a powerful set of complementary structures. I love the visual that you've shown me, Roger, of the dashboard of a car. And do you want to explain that? You can do a better job than I can now I've mentioned it.
Oh, yeah. I think most of our listeners are probably familiar with it, but
okay.
No, it's always good to revisit it. So your key performance indicators are your fuel gauge, your water temperature, or your battery charge nowadays. So they tell you what you've got in the tank, but they don't tell you what direction to go in. They just tell you how the health, if you will, of the car at that particular given moment. It's your sat nav, which is your OKRs, because that's what shows you the path ahead. That's what gives you the waypoints to tell you you're on the right track, and so on and so forth.
And if I was thinking of a design sprint, what the design sprint is then doing is designing the solution to get you there. So it's designing the vehicle or the method of transport. What's the most efficient, effective way to get you there, meeting all of your needs as a user? So it's about creating the solution to the goal.
The thing which is just kind of coming up for me as well at the moment, because we're getting a lot of clients now that are kind of, and this is as we move into more and more work with larger organizations, it can be, a few of them have tried the 3-month cycles and they're starting to switch over to 4 months because they feel like, okay, it means one less reset every 12 months, but it gives us a little bit more of a runway to get stuck into whatever it is we define. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking, if we were to bring in design sprints to at the moment, quarterly cycle, mm-hmm. that's chipping away at the time for delivery even more. And I can see if this was to pick up and be embraced by a lot of our clients, I can probably see more of them opting for 4-month cycles, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. One of the things that often doesn't get talked about with design sprints is how much time it actually saves.
Oh, right.
So people focus on how much time is needed to do the design sprint, to get the people in the room and how,
like I just did.
Exactly, and how hard it is to spend 4 days working on something. There's some fantastic research being done by a former colleague of mine, Amar Khalifeh from AJ and Smart, and he did his master's thesis into the ROI of design sprints, and he showed that actually, on average, there is at least a 7 times time saving in running a design sprint.
Wow.
So that means that compared to a normal way of working, you will do something 7 times faster if you start it with a design sprint.
Wow.
That's incredible. So when you think about actually how hard it is to get those people in a room for a couple of days versus the payoff from that, that's phenomenal. And that's something that really needs to be understood and talked about more. And the reason that it delivers that is because it tells you up front whether the idea is going to work and is worth investing in, rather than following an old way of working, starting a project, going through the process of starting it, you create some visuals, then you turn that into an actual, I'm thinking here of a sort of digital project, for example. It feels like the easiest way to illustrate this. So we do some visuals, then we turn that into some early stage development, then we do some more development and probably some more development. Like, this can go on for months. And then we put it in front of some users and they tell us, nah, that's not actually what I wanted. That's not solving my problem. Or even more likely, the environment has already changed and it's no longer necessary. So all of those months and months of work have been wasted because you've either created something that the user didn't need in the first place, or you've created something that they no longer need. And all those months of work by a development team and a design team goes straight in the bin. And what we're doing is using a process to take 4 days to test it, not 4 months or even 4 years. I've worked places where people have worked on things like this for years, but in just 4 days, working out whether something is worth doing and worth investing in.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes, but I'd love to just hear some war stories, if you have them, of where you've used this, the design sprint methodology with clients and have seen some really fantastic results.
Yeah. I'm going to carry on the theme that I just talked about in terms of realizing quickly that something might not be the best idea. And I can't share names because of confidentiality.
Of course.
But I worked with a really interesting client, and this was a small organization, and we had the two founders in the room who were actively involved in the running of the organization. And they had a very, very successful solution to an HR need. And it was doing absolutely fantastically well. Lots of really, really reliable clients doing repeat work. But they wanted to innovate and they wanted to create a new product. And they had an idea and they wanted to test this idea out. So we ran a design sprint for them. And actually what the design sprint showed us was that the idea wasn't really meeting any particular need. Nobody really needed it. And the reason that they didn't need it was because they already had a system in place using the client's existing solution. That was so integral to them that by using the new solution, it would almost cannibalize it.
Right. So was this a classic situation where it was somebody's pet project?
I think so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Potentially. Now, actually, that's not to say that the whole thing was a complete waste of time, because what came out of it was that the original idea didn't really hold water, but there was an essence, a nugget of a brilliant idea in there that just needed to be done slightly differently.
Right.
And so with that client, what we actually did was run 2 design sprints back to back. So we took the output of that original design sprint and ran a second one, which I call is sort of known as an iteration sprint, and ran that straight afterwards. And that allowed us to take those learnings, which were so important, and turn them into information for a new product, one that we didn't even know we needed at the start of the process. So you could say the first design sprint was a huge failure, but actually that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to validate ideas. And finding out that they're bad ideas is just as important as finding out that they're good ideas, because then you're not going to waste your time developing something that nobody needs.
Exactly.
And to do that in 4 days instead of in 6 months, that's a huge win.
I can think of a few instances where I wished I'd done a design sprint first.
I mean, I wish I could have designed sprint my life, Roger. I could have avoided a lot of things I didn't want to do.
Brilliant.
So that that's one outcome, is that it tells you something's a bad idea. Actually, then run another design sprint and you'll get somewhere. Another really successful use of a design sprint was working with actually a large financial services company quite recently on a marketing campaign. Now, if you think of the kind of environment that we're working in at the minute, with a cost of living crisis and property market, all of these things are very, very volatile, and it's very difficult for people to know what to do. So financial services organizations, which are probably some of the biggest ships to try and turn.
Yeah.
They really need to start embracing these methodologies so much more within their organizations. But this particular building society came to me to ask for a design sprint to be run. And actually, we did it as a hackathon. So we have 4 design sprints running in parallel, all by different teams, all facilitated by one of the team. And they ran these sprints to try and create a solution to young people getting on the housing ladder.
Oh, right.
Okay, and entering the housing market. And it was phenomenal. It was so successful the ambition at the start of the sprint, or the start of the hackathon, was that only one idea would get taken forward. So the CEO would choose the winning team, and their idea would be taken forward. Actually, all 4 ideas had so much merit within them, and so much incredible content generation that all of the concepts are being used in some way as part of the communications through this year for that particular building society. And they actually loved it as well, just as a way of working. It was quite funny because we had a bit of feedback from one of the C-suite, and she said to me, I can't explain to you how it feels to see the behaviours that we've seen the last few days. And I was really worried. I was like, oh God, why? What have we done wrong? What did you see? What happened? I'm so sorry. And she said, no. We're a building society. People don't normally react to things. They just sort of sit and listen and then quietly sneak away. She said, you had people stood on chairs applauding each other and whooping at each other during the solution presentations. We've never seen that before. And that's not very British. It's not very British. It's not very British. It's certainly not very building society. And but that's what happens when you bring people together and you give them a structure to allow them to participate, to be safe, to share their ideas, and to do that in a fun, innovative, engaging and creative way. And that's what people are coming to work for. And that's what these processes allow people to do. And it makes such a difference. Yeah. No, that makes it sound really powerful. Oh, and just for our overseas listeners, a building society is similar to a bank, but it's actually, instead of having shareholders, you've actually got members, and those members are the customers. And we used to have quite a few in this country, but we've only got a few that are left, but they do have a particular place in the market, I think. They do, yes. They do. And a unique challenge as well. But I could do a whole other podcast on banks versus building societies. Yes, absolutely. So, Sara, thank you so much for taking us through all that. That's fantastic. I know I've certainly learned more, and we've talked about design sprints in the past, but I've still picked up more from this conversation. So, personally for me, thank you. If our listeners wanted to find out more, how can they do that? They can go to my website, which is onegiantleap.studio. It has some basic knowledge, but it definitely has some ways to get in touch with me. What I like to do is to work with people to create design sprints or workshops that really meet their needs. So they will be based on the core design sprint methodology, but often flexed to allow it to work within an organization. So that's the best thing to do. Go to onegiantleap.studio, use the links on there to get in touch with me. Yeah. And then we can have a nice quick chat about what it is that people need and how we might be able to help with that. Okay. Sara, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. We managed to make it through without the dogs barking, which is always a blessing. The dog walker has just pulled up outside, so I'm waiting for the chaos to start. Okay. All right. Well, I'll sign off here. Thank you very much, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Giant Talk, and I shall be back very soon with another interesting conversation around OKRs and all things related to them. Take care now.